would have to leave. It's been 4 years since my wife and I tied the knot of. I can say without a shred of dishonesty that the time I spent with her was the most enjoyable of my whole life. On the other hand, God showed me one day all of the filthy atrocities that she had committed previously in front of me. That completely shattered not only me, but also her life as well. Before we go into the details of the narrative of the story, it is necessary to point out that you have the chance to get in touch with us so that we may tell you about more fascinating stories that will be coming in the future by just hitting the bell icon and subscribe to our channel. I first came into contact with her approximately 4 years ago. She was deemed to be the greatest representation of her company at a business conference, and as a result, she was given an award for her efforts. When I first laid eyes on her, I thought she was stunningly beautiful and really alluring. My initial plan was to congratulate her in person and then meet her, but because of the large number of individuals who were interested in speaking with her, I was unable to do so. Following her departure from the conference, my assistant was charged with the responsibility of sending her an invitation to a lunch meeting. Despite this, she did not consent. After that, I went to her workplace to talk to her. After I had arrived, there was a discussion that took place in the cafeteria. We started off as strangers but eventually became friends. She could not believe her eyes when she saw me there. Found the truth about my wife's work tips through the help of a private investigator. I offered her the chance to become a part of my company, but something in her bag in advance of the next trip and that nearly caused her to have a heart attack. We did not experience any difficulties at any point during the starting stages. We did not even fight. It was very much like the ideal wedding for the both of us. We were both quite experienced in our own fields as individuals. We were employed by various businesses, yet we remained in close contact with one another at all times. In addition, we traveled to several popular holiday destinations during our work time. We had reached the pinnacle of human achievement. There was no reason to be concerned about any of those things emotionally or momentarily. It was nothing unusual for her to take part in business trips, given how frequently she did it. She had, as a matter of fact, recently been elevated to a very nice post and was now receiving an exceptional compensation package. Despite the fact that we shared a lot of happiness throughout most of my time together, I did not start experiencing issues until after we had been married 4 years and she had received a promotion. It was brought to my attention that she was engaging in questionable behavior. During that time period, she would spend the majority of her nights going to parties with her male co-workers and spending time outside. Because I was such a chill person at the time, she never had to put up with me asking her anything. Because I had such confidence in her, I simply could not bring myself to feel pity for her situation. But I must confess that was one of my significant errors, to exclusively trust her. In any case, I ought to have been a little more stringent. The first time we have ever got into fight was on the way to a nice meal together one evening when we were supposed to be in a romantic mood. When it came to our romantic night together, she really had other ideas. It had been many weeks since we had any kind of romantic dinner, so this was one very special. Even though she knew how badly I wanted it, she refused to accompany me there. She made an excuse that she could not meet me because she had to see a more important customer. She chose to meet someone who was merely a co-worker rather than spending time with me. Since she went to do so, she argued with me in a very poor manner, as if she was frustrated, and it looked to me that she was frustrated because she would not be able to meet anyone at the event. I told her that she should not go, and she argued with me in a really awful manner. The fact that she would not even spend one night with me was the source of a great deal of my anger and frustration. I attempted to have a conversation with her, but she would not listen to me. After some while, I decided to go. I made several attempts to stop her, but she was determined to fight with Emma that night. It struck me as a rather disrespectful action. I let her go, and I've reached the point where I can no longer put up with that. She told me that she was sorry for being so impolite when she returned to the house in the morning. She apologized for her behavior, but claimed it was a very significant contract for her company, and she was also running late, which led to her becoming nasty. She said she was sorry for her behavior. Because I assured her everything was fine, she believed me when I told her it was okay. Following the apologies, I decided to accept her explanation. We embraced one another and made up. We both agreed that in the future, we will communicate more effectively and try to be more understanding of one another. Nevertheless, I had the impression that something was wrong with me. My vehicle once again decided to give up on me, and as a result, I was forced to borrow hers. During the time I was driving her vehicle, I was pulled over by a law enforcement officer who questioned me about the documentation that accompanied my vehicle. When I opened the glove compartment, I discovered a man's watch inside of it. Absolutely none of it belonged to me. When I saw that watch, I couldn't believe my eyes. After obtaining the document, I handed it over to the officer. After pondering the question for the remainder of the day, I made up my mind to inquire about the history of this watch to my wife as soon as she returned from work. When I showed her the watch, she immediately started to feel anxious. She inquired as to where I had located it. She inquired as to where it was obtained. I was about to tell her where I had heard it, but she interrupted me by saying, "Actually, my boss was with me and he was sitting behind a coworker in the back seat. There is a possibility that he lost his watch over there." As I sat here and listened to all of this, I couldn't believe it. I responded to her by telling her that I had discovered in the glove box of her car. She continued to have a bemused expression on her face, but she paid it no attention. She merely uttered the following: "I'm very excited about it, so please leave the watch on the table." She thanked me for locating the watch, and I placed it on the table before I left. After that, she disclosed to me that she intended to present it to her manager in the capacity of a gift. As I was leaving the room, I gave a kind grin and waved farewell. There was something peculiar about the way she behaved. A similar thing happened the other time when I was at home late at night and I found her husband talking on her cell phone. Immediately after entering her room, she burst out laughing in an unexpected manner. Since it was obvious to me before I entered the room that she had not been laughing for a while, I had a great deal of uncertainty when I went in there. I grew suspicious. It was during that night that I first became concerned that she may have an illness. It occurred to me that I ought to maintain a vigilant vigilance over here. The next day, after reading about the traits of cheaters and how to catch them on the internet, my primary purpose was to hire a private investigator who could assist me in finding the truth. After a week of looking, I was eventually successful in locating the ideal private investigator who would be able to assist me. I was able to discover the truth about my girlfriend with his assistance and then confront her with the information that I had found out about her. After scrolling for 2 hours, as at last I found a link that would let me to hire a private investigator. I got in touch with him and we agreed to get together. I informed him of all that I was involved. Nevertheless, when I listed, I did not understand why he was so certain that she was cheating on me with another man. I explained to him that I was not interested in hearing his opinion, but I needed his assistance in determining whether or not she was acting inappropriately. He smiled and remarked that, "It seems like you don't have much faith in your wife." I insisted that I had never made such a claim. When I told him to go to work, he immediately got to it. After a few days, he decided to seek her down, but he did not discover anything fishy in the investigation. In his report for the previous week, I thought it was adequate. Despite this, he was confident that there was something else to be found. I instructed him to break off his pursuit of her. Now I can confidently put my faith in her. He cautioned me to maintain vigilance. In the end, I chose to disregard his recommendation. since I realized it was pointless. As a replacement, I worked harder to show her how much I cared by doing things that would make her happy. I speculated that perhaps she was preoccupied with her professional responsibilities and that this was the reason for her odd behavior. I decided to surprise her with a candlelight meal in comfort of our home. After having to wait a significant amount of time for her, I did not observe any signs of joy when she finally showed up. When she arrived, she merely supported a nondescript appearance. I asked her whether she liked everything that I had done, and she said that she did when I asked her about it. She went to sleep after making an excuse about a highly important meeting that was scheduled for the next day. Despite the fact that I fully comprehend her predicament, I could not contain my enthusiasm about going to the dinner. She had mentioned to me in the past that she would be out on a business trip the next weekend. At the time, I had complete faith in her. When I opened the drawer containing my wife's apparel, I was taken aback to see that none of her lingeries were there in the drawer. It was a significant flashpoint for me at the time. I didn't waste any time getting in touch with a private investigator and was already on his way to the next investigation. It was shown beyond a reasonable doubt that she was unfaithful when a private investigator caught her spending the night in the same room as another man. He persisted in his insistence that I did not believe him at that time despite my best efforts. Nevertheless, my anxiety levels skyrocketed when he sent me a few images of her with that other man. I was completely at a loss for what to do. I was experiencing pain once more. I had been profoundly in love with this woman for a long time, and when she finally betrayed me, I thought about calling her, but I could not bring myself to do it since I was so devastated. Because he would absolutely lie if I accused her right now, and she came home after 2 days of being gone, I felt it would be best to address her when she comes at the house. Before she arrived, I had already made preparations, and I knew for a fact that I was going to have to part ways with her. Due to the fact that I was stuck to my strategy, I did not engage in conversation with her when she returned home. There was no denying that I was extremely impatient as I awaited the next chance to confront her about the crimes she had committed and to confront her about them. In anticipation of that moment, I was holding my breath in anticipation of the arrival of that moment. I was informed by her in 2 days that she would have to leave again the following week for a business trip that would take place the week after that. At the designated time for her departure, I slipped an envelope into her bag as soon as she stepped out of the building. In a few minutes, she will be on her way to the excursion. After loading her belongings into my vehicle, I drove away. After she arrived at the location, I have a sneaking suspicion that the first thing she did was to open the bag, and then she called me in a panic, asking where all of these things came from. Having said that, I was then able to go on to say that I was very well versed in all aspects of the topic at the end. The consequences of your actions had to be dealt with by you. As well as that, I also included the divorce papers in the package. After she began asking me not to get her divorce, I went ahead and did so, along with sharing those images with her office staff as soon as she started asking me not to get her divorced. The fact that this happened to her was quite upsetting to her. Despite the fact that she could have been saved, it was too late. Although I have not yet been able to complete my vigilance, I was able to feel relieved after carrying out this act of revenge. My defender informed me that according to one of my defenders, she would terminate it from her position because the man with whom she was having sexual relations was married to another woman who was a stakeholder in the company where she worked, and that this was the reason why she was terminated. Knowing that I had played a role in producing the result brought a sense of fulfillment to me. She was never able to get over the shame that was brought upon her. I felt a sense of release after exacting my revenge. I felt a sense of justice and satisfaction that she had to experience the same humiliation she had inflicted on me. I was no longer the victim, and I felt empowering. I had taken control of my own destiny.